Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. So, it has been such an exciting year for pro football in the state of Michigan. I remember being in Michigan before the season even began and getting in on the action via Play Gun Lake, having to select. They had a special deal like pick your one team that's going to go all the way. And I picked Detroit. I guess I was being a bit of a homer because I was in Michigan, but also because I believed it. Detroit Pro Football finished with a record of 15-2 in a first round bye. They're an 8.5 point home fave, hosting Washington this Saturday, 8 p.m. in the next round of the playoffs. And then Sunday at 3, please don't call my house because I'll be watching television and looking at Philadelphia as a 6 point home fave hosting Los Angeles. And then next Monday is not only the presidential inauguration, but also Monday night, the college football championship. Notre Dame and Ohio State. Ohio State, a 9 point fave. I've been saying, and I still believe that's a lot of points. I think I like Notre Dame. Whether your team scores or not, there's always another way to win. On the Play Gun Lake online casino and sportsbook app in Michigan, the Bet Parks app in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Maryland. Bet Parks and Play Gun Lake are the only apps that I ever use and recommend to bet sports and to play all your favorite casino games for real money. So get some skin in the game, bet sports, or play blackjack, craps, poker, roulette when there's downtime on the field. It's like the best of all worlds. PlayGunLake.com or BetParks.com for details. You've got to be 21, and in Michigan for the Play Gun Lake app, 21, and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Michigan for the Bet Parks app. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I still see collision coming between Detroit and Philly. That's when I'm really going to have my mettle tested as to which way to go with my wagering. Today, on this Wednesday, the poll question of the day at Smerconish.com. And this is the result of a conversation that we had on radio yesterday. In the aftermath of a weather catastrophe, is price gouging, doing the finger thing, I'm using that word, is price gouging a necessary mechanism to balance supply and demand, or is it exploitative and taking advantage of vulnerable customers? The reason that I'm asking it is that I came on air yesterday having seen a story with the winds kicking up in Southern California, fear of the spread of the fire at a time when, quote, tens of thousands of wildfire evacuees are now scrambling to find and hold on to temporary shelter, exacerbating the housing shortage in one of America's least affordable cities. And the story goes on to say that 92,000 people were under evacuation orders. That was as of yesterday. So many who are displaced are scattered in shelter beds, hotel rooms, relative spare rooms, and friends' couches, unsure about where they're going to go next. So you've got people in really dire straits. And then Andrew Romano, who's been a guest of this radio program, writing for Yahoo, said the following. When California Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency last Tuesday in response to the Los Angeles wildfires, it triggered a key protection for tens of thousands of evacuated Angelenos who suddenly need a new place to live because their homes are either burned down or their neighborhoods could be off limits. Following the declaration of emergency, the California Attorney General's office explained the statute generally prohibits landlords from increasing the price of rental housing by more than 10% of the previously charged advertised price. That's what they're calling price gouging, anything that's in excess of the 10%. And yet, even though California has a law, and both the governor and the attorney general and the mayor have all said appropriately, condemning things of people who are violating the law, LA landlords for at least 400 rental properties seem to have ignored that warning. There is a crowdsourced spreadsheet from a housing advocate named Chelsea Kirk, the Los Angeles Tenants Union, and it comes complete with addresses, Zillow links, dates of rental increases, documenting that people are violating the price gouging statute as it relates to housing. One of the more extreme examples, a 9,615 square foot Tudor mansion in Bel Air. It was listed for $29,500 in December. Now has reappeared this week for $39,000 a month. But it's not just at the highest end of the market. A modest property, 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom in Woodland Hills, listed for $3,900 in November. Now it's $5,900. Some of those listed are no longer on the market. Others have seen their prices lowered, presumably to comply with the law. But elsewhere, the quote unquote gouging continues. There's a website called lalist.com that also lays lots of this out. And it says that when an LA List reporter called a listing agent, she said dozens of prospective tenants who've lost homes to the fires have been contacting her about the other listings. She said that it's crazy and then ended the call. When she was questioned about whether this violates the law, the realtor didn't want to have any part of that conversation and hung up. I took a look at the law in California. The Attorney General has published a Q&A on it. And it says, if you're asking more than 10% of what the previous value was, then you've engaged in gouging in California. But we've had this dialogue before in the context of flashlights, water, and generators. There was a guy who came from the Northeast, I forget exactly where, went down to Florida after there was a storm. I think it was Ian, and he brought a bunch of generators, and he was looking to make a buck. And he was in violation of one of the state's anti-gouging laws. But I and others looked at that and said, that's a free market response. Like, he's showing up and providing generators where they otherwise would not exist. Similarly, I made the observation on radio yesterday that if I went into a convenience store that was still operating and they had flashlights, if the price had not been, quote, gouged or raised, I might buy a couple of them when I really only need one, just because some hoarding instinct might kick in. In other words, there's an argument to be made for letting the market drive up prices so as to preclude people who are in a position to buy more of whatever is scarce and leave it on the shelves for others, whether it's toilet paper or water or a flashlight. John Stossel, writing for Reason in the midst of the pandemic, Reason.com, got into this. And he makes the case. So hear this out if you think that gouging is necessarily a bad thing. Quote, we don't have any fill in the blank. People are stocking up on things, fearing that we will be stuck in our homes under quarantine without essential supplies. Some hoard toilet paper. A popular internet video features somebody driving up to what appears to be a drug dealer, but it's really somebody selling toilet paper. When it became hard to find hand sanitizer in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo said that the state would produce its own made by prison labor. Yet in-demand items like masks and hand sanitizer can still be found. It's just that you have to pay an inflated price, and social media is outraged by that. They post pictures of stores showing high prices like $19.99 for a can of Lysol spray or $22.99 for a 12-ounce bottle of Perel. But he says people will always look for ways to line their own pockets. And what politicians, this is John Stossel writing for Reason.com, what politicians call gouging is just supply and demand. Prices will rise and fall all the time. And most states' anti-gouging laws never say exactly what is unconscionably excessive, which invites abuse. Vague laws give politicians dangerous power. They can use anti-gouging laws to punish any merchant who doesn't give them money or kiss their rings. I get it. As I said on air yesterday, relative to water, these commodities, water, toilet paper, flashlights, fill in the blank. I do at least entertain the argument that says folks are going to get shut out at the low end of the socioeconomic ladder. That's probably going to happen to them anyway. But to keep more on the shelves for a greater number of people, probably you have to let the market run its course. Housing, I think, is more difficult because there's by definition, there's such a finite number of units. It's not like you can bring in more water eventually and solve the problem. You can bring in more flashlights. You can bring in more toilet paper and get through this. There's such a limited number of units in Southern California to begin with. And now when you've got 92,000 people subject to evacuation orders, and that number is probably over 100,000 now, the market doesn't seem as situated to deal with it. We had a great conversation on radio about this yesterday, and I thought I got to come back to this and make it today's poll question. So here's what I want to know. In the aftermath of one of these catastrophes, gouging, is it necessary because it can balance supply and demand, or is it an exploitative practice, one that takes advantage of vulnerable consumers? Go to Smerconish.com, cast your ballot on that. I'm really eager to see which way the poll question turns out on this in the aftermath of yet another, horrific weather catastrophe. Thank you for watching. Please make sure that you like and subscribe, and also set yourself up so that you get notifications when I'm commenting on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much.